To be very honest, I'm not editor-in-chief, Rachel is, but I'm still trying to make everybody nervous. Very, very happy to be back in Zurich for I don't know how many times. And it's always a difficult story for me because I sent the proposal description for the session a year ago, and I had no idea what I would be doing for the entire year. And then I looked it up 3 weeks ago, and I was like, oh my God. I'm going to speak about service workers and all the fancy things. Where are my Houdini people? Who is really interested in CSS Houdini? Anybody super curious about Houdini? One person? Excellent. Service workers. Everybody's about service workers these days, right? 5 people? React. Everybody's on React. React people? Oh, React people. So what else? Web components. Where are my web components people? So this talk is not about anything of that kind. I'm very sorry for ruining your time. I wanted to bring something that most people don't speak about. Or I wanted to highlight something that maybe get forgotten in all this kind of exploration and excitement about all the frameworks and all the technology that we have to deal with every day. So while I do speak about front-end adventures, I kind of look into it from a different perspective. And you will see in a moment what I mean by that. But before, just a little test. I do not have any responsibility. I do not take any responsibility for what you're going to see next. Some things you're going to see are not nice, not beautiful, not elegant, not great in any way, but they are the state of things today. And these are certain things that we need to know as we're moving forward in the web community. And when I look specifically into these adventures, over the last 6 months, I studied a lot in terms of privacy and also what it means for us as designers and us as developers. So anybody is familiar with this infamous term that has become this unanimous thing everywhere called GDPR. Is anybody excited about GDPR? Oh, a couple of people. That's pretty great. The thing is, it's been a really interesting adventure to find out what people think, where they access the web, and also how we, as developers, what do we need to know about that? So this is just one of the parts. It's not going to be a talk about GDPR, God forbid, of course not. But I want to share some of the important things that I think are worth noticing. So I was doing this research. I was actually teaching in the University of Amsterdam, Interaction Design in Amsterdam, and I was speaking to students, people who are maybe between 17 to 22 years old, about how they see the web, right? You know, I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, yes, I'm that old. When I was growing up, I remember vividly how exciting the web was. You would publish something on the web and everybody would share. It was so exciting, so incredible. And I was very disappointed that the way young generation, or next generation after me, sees the web is this. This is the web. This is not the most elegant and beautiful web we've seen or we've got used to. You want to read an article, that's a good idea per se. You want to read an article, get all these wonderful pop-ups and push notifications and toolbars and sign-in prompts and cookie prompts and all of that. This is what the web has become. But in many ways, it doesn't matter what you do. You want to do one little thing, like maybe at some point of your life, this is supposed to be a video, by the way. At some point of your life, you want to buy a yacht. Who doesn't want to buy, boat, it doesn't matter. Who doesn't want to buy a boat, right? So you go to these beautiful sites, and they have these incredible videos playing, and it's beautiful. I mean, it's a bit pixelated, but it's still beautiful in some way. You click on this fancy button saying, build your model, and then you have a nice configuration. This is how it usually works, right? And then you have a hamburger icon on the top, and boom, flash-alike intro, and boom. That's your configurator. And so you're about to pay 1 million francs, and they give you half a carousel, not even a full carousel, right? That's a bit disrespectful. 2 hamburger icons on the top for the price of 1. That's kind of cool. That's how cheap they are, right? And then, because you know your way around, you start clicking around, and then you realize, there is this button, hide summary button. You click on that button, and then it disappears. But then it appears again, right? And so you are just about to give somebody a lot of money, and that's the interface that they give you, right? Here's another one from a bank insurance. You're setting up your profile, right? And they have this beautiful, elegant interface. And one of the questions that are being asked here, well, do you have children? Right? And at some point, there must be a designer sitting somewhere in front of Sketch or Photoshop thinking, do you have children? A slider. It has to be a slider, right? And then, of course, I mean, the slider has this kind of feature, has a minimum value, and it has a maximum value. Now, with minimum value, we kind of know where we're going. The minimum value is probably going to be 0, I hope, right? But the maximum has to be defined. Luckily, developers took good care of that. So they set up a maximum, which is 5, right? So you can pull out and then you get maximum 5. But if you have 6, let's say, there is a way out. That's great. So you can click on this pencil icon right here, and that thing turns into an input field, so you can type whatever you like. And then if you type 6 or 7, it will be accepted, but at the end of the checkout, it will tell you, no, 5. Just so you know, just in case you're making a mistake or so, just so you know better. And then we ended up doing this, creating this kind of interfaces, and it's really, really horrible if you look into it. And you know, if you don't like bugs, please do not watch. It's not going to be pleasant. So this is a tool or a product, right? So you oh, this doesn't load. Performance issue here. So you want to explore this beauty of a product, right? And I can imagine somebody saying, let's add a little bit of gray. Maybe a little bit of red. Let's add a little bit of red, just so it looks like, oh, let's have a configurator, because everybody likes a configurator, right? So let's have a configurator. Let's put a bug on a slider in a configurator. Because who doesn't like that? And then you end up answering a couple of questions, right? Going from one thing to another. So where are the bugs? Everywhere. They're everywhere. What do I do? They're everywhere. And then I keep going, and then they show you the final product, what you need to buy. And the best part about all of this is they have exactly one product on the site. Right? But you know, this is what we can do. So we worked really hard over all these years to really make people buy things and click on things and do things that we want. We're really, really good at this. Nobody's better than Ryanair, of course. I mean, this is the old site that changed, obviously, but I'm like an elephant, I never forget. The Ryanair, I never forget. Because for a long time, they had this wonderful drop-down. You know, when you book a ticket, flight ticket with Ryanair, the insurance is added in for you automatically, unless you opt out. You just need to know how to opt out, because to opt out, you need to find, don't insure me, conveniently located between Denmark and Finland. Oh, isn't this nice? This is great, right? And so we are laughing because we really kind of, as web people, we understand that this is pretty horrible dark patterns, right? We know this stuff and we will find a way to get out, right? But then things got worse. I don't know how many of you have seen this before. There's an Instagram ad, because people don't like to have things on their phone like hair or dirt. So let's Photoshop a hair, and the conversion increased because people started clicking. Or somebody said, let's do better. We can add some dirt, just a little bit of dirt as a pop-up at the top. And of course, people click because, you know, why not? And who doesn't like a good push notification? Push notifications everywhere. And we've got so good into crafting those messages and wording to really make people click. Because, you know, my medic has really excelled at this. They really did. So you either don't want to stay alive, or get push notifications, right? Or, and this is the version that actually worked better. Now, that's just getting nicer and nicer. This is unbelievable. So now, looking at this, it shouldn't be very surprising that according to Mozilla's telemetry study, only 3% of these prompts actually get accepted, which is actually a pretty significant number still, but only 3%. And most people who actually get to see one just leave right away. And this is a very typical behavior for pretty much everything that we're experiencing on the web, because there are many, many dark patterns, not to mention those things that are just annoying, right? Where you add a bubble, a red bubble somewhere to a new feature that you have, and people click because they don't want to have unread messages, unread notifications, right? Or this is my favorite one. You click on an email to unsubscribe from a mailing list, and then they tell you that it will take a while, like 7 days to 30 days. It's like there is a donkey that takes your email address and goes over the mountains just to deliver that you are about to be unsubscribed, right? And not to mention, of course, all of those things that everywhere, these people did that, and so on and so forth. And the best part about it, that most of them are fake. And there are studies proving that. So if you look into the code, there are JSON files where they have the names combined with the countries, combined with the products, combined with the discounts, just kind of generated dynamically, right? And unfortunately, many plugins that are doing things like that are actually extremely popular. And this is what Chris tweeted today. A little sad that the most popular WordPress plugin, by 5-time margin to the next one down, is one that helps you add absolutely obnoxious pop-ups, right? So this is the state of things, and that's a little bit sad, of course, but it gets much, 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 much better. Anybody using Amazon? Doubling web services? Have you read the privacy policy or terms and conditions of Amazon? It's a fantastic reading material for Friday night. So it's approximately, I think it's 83 pages printed out at A4. And I made it to my commitment for the last 6 months to read every single privacy policy of every single app that I'm going to use. That's been a hell of a thing. I will never do that again. And whenever you get this wonderful cookie pop-up, right, I'm going to go to extremes to deactivate everything just to see how much they want to screw me over, right? And it's been an incredible journey. So with Amazon Web Services, if you go to 57.10, you find the AWS Zombie Apocalypse clause. This restriction will not apply in the event of the occurrence of a widespread viral infection transmitted via bites of contact with bodily fluids that causes human corpses to reanimate and seek to consume living human flesh, blood, brain, and nerve tissue, and is likely to result in the fall of organized civilization. Which is essentially the way out, is because they're producing Lumberjack, a game engine, where you can also build monsters and things, zombies. They do not take responsibility if this tool is ever used in case of apocalypse clause. You know, and this is what I feel every single time I look at this privacy policy. This is unbelievable. How did we get there? I mean, when you meet somebody, it's not like they're giving you this policy, like, please read 55 pages first before I get to know you, right? We just start talking, and then eventually kind of get to this progressive, experience together. But when it comes to web services, we just accept it. Now, for example, is anybody familiar with this beauty? Face app. Anybody tested it? Some people did. Did you read the privacy policy behind that? Do you know what you agreed to? Because if you look at all these wonderful new things that show up, most of the time I'm really curious, how is it that these tools, which are kind of cool and nice and nifty and have these all wonderful tools, right? How come that they have such an incredibly long and demanding privacy policy? It's like they spent maybe 1 month building the app and maybe a year writing the privacy policy, right? Because if you look inside, well, obviously, give them all rights to everything they ever, like, the pictures that you post, of course, belong to them. It shouldn't be too surprising. But the worst part about it is really that it's not only them they have the rights to it. They can give it to anyone they like. They can even use it in any product they will build in their lifetime without asking you, right? This is nice, isn't it? And also, they will be collecting other things like device identified, which they will also gladly give away to advertisers, right? And third parties and so on. And don't get me wrong, it's not like I'm forking Firefox's focus and I'm trying to block everything I can. I'm not privacy obsessed, right? But there are certain things that we need to know, I need to understand better. So when I was looking into this world, one thing that was really frustrating is, we are not aware of things that are happening around us. Now, even if YouTube serves ads with CPU draining cryptocurrency, would you like to, have a Bitcoin miner running as you're watching a video? Would you feel comfortable with that? Maybe not, so we started fighting back. We started fighting back with tools like ad blockers, and ad blockers are really helpful unless they don't. Like every single day, Facebook changes like the class names and the spans and the number of spans and the divs, just so sponsored posts or sponsored articles or sponsored pieces do not get blocked. And there is even a war. Remember vividly 2 years ago, there was a big war where people thought that it's actually a good idea to make ad blockers illegal. Who is using an ad blocker? Most of you. Well, you're all, that's illegal. No, it's not illegal, right? But then there are always this trick. But then there are also tools. Like now you can stop ad blocking on your site because there is a stop ad block. But then somebody came up and said, what the hell? Let's block the ad blocker, right? And then this is an ongoing war, and this war it just keeps going and going, getting dirty and dirty because there are scripts fighting against scripts, fighting against scripts, fighting against scripts, and we're still using them. And that's fine, right? The problem is sometimes we're using ones that are not trustworthy. So Ghostery, if you're using Ghostery, please switch, because Ghostery also was collecting data about people who were blocking advertising and selling it to advertisers so they can monetize it. That's kind of a shady model, I would say, right? So Ghostery maybe not, but then all these tools, and I thought for a long time that I'm the only one, I'm the only freak in the house who would block Facebook and block, all the advertising and all the tracking and all of that, but it wasn't true. So I was really surprised when I discovered in February and March that it's normal, it's a default. People install ad blocker because everybody recommends it, right? And the newcomer of the season is stop chat pop-ups, blocker of pop-ups and chat pop-ups. And then there are even tools like this, track this, which opens 100 tabs, so your profile that's being collected on you is totally ruined because they open all kind of weird pages you would never go to and pretend that you have a Lamborghini and you have all kind of really like gold and all of that. You can change your own profile in a minute, right? That's incredible. And obviously, advertisers track this, right? That's pretty cool. There are all these tools, like make medium readable again. And I don't care about cookies and clickbait remover for YouTube, which changes images, thumbnail images from the left to the right, right? And there are so many tools like that. But there is a significant difference between the images on the left and on the right, I would say, right? And this is normal. So if you look into the state of things today, this is where we are. Whenever you encounter a pop-up or modal, block. Whenever you get to ask to be, would you like to subscribe to our push notifications, block. Chat window pop-ups, block most of the time. Install app prompts, block. Importing context, no. We've learned from LinkedIn, we don't want to have that. Again, right? No way I'm going to import my context. Video autoplay, block, right? Geolocation permission, block. GDPR, okay. This is okay, I have nothing to hide. It's not a big deal. Advertising, block. Turn off ad blocker. Yeah, right. There is no way I'm going to turn off my ad blocker. We have strategies, right? So whenever somebody gives you a pop-up like, please turn off an ad blocker, what do we do? Well, there is an obvious solution that, like 60% of people do this, like incognito mode. So who would go into incognito mode? Oh, I know you so well, right? Incognito mode, right? Or maybe in the case we'll be using a special browser that doesn't have any ad tracking, but there is no way we're going to turn off ad blocker at this browser. No, not happening, not happening. Access to camera photos, block. Again, context, we talked about it. Email input, that's a fun one. Email input. Now, when I look at you, you don't have just one email. No. So imagine you're in a Wi-Fi, like in an airport, and you want to get into Wi-Fi, and have options to sign in via Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or email. That's a reasonable choice, right? Who would prefer Instagram to sign in to get online? 0%? Because, yeah, we won't let them in. This is very personal. Instagram is very personal. No, we won't let them in. No. What about Twitter? One person. Twitter is a bit personal too. Facebook. More Facebook. Who cares about Facebook anyway, right? But then email, right? Email. Now, what kind of email will we give them? I've always been curious, like what if they give me access to the database which has all these emails? It's probably such an incredibly creative, powerful database. It's wonderful, right? Because there are two strategies that people do. They either use a fake, the unimportant email, which is a wonderful inbox full of newsletters and sign-ups and reminders, notifications that nobody ever reads. It's just a bad thing, right? Or you go to something like temp email and create a disposable one. How many of you do that? Oh, people, right? And everybody's trying to cheat us, right? No, not going to give them proper email unless they give us a very good reason to do so. And fighting, like getting the proper email, it's really, really hard. It's really, really difficult. Social sign-in, maybe. It depends on what you want to do. Capture, cry. I mean, what else can we do, right? And then very often I get to hear this. I have nothing to hide. So if I talk about this now, right? Yeah, we have all this advertising and tracking and all of that. But honestly, like between you and me now, who honestly believes, what's the big deal? I have nothing to hide. Nothing to hide. Well, let's talk about this, because I think it's very important before we move on to CSS stuff. Like, it's not about having something to hide. It's about having certain information staying private. Because your information doesn't belongs to you. It doesn't belong to anybody else. Would you like your private information, like menstrual cycles, to be available public? That's probably not the case. Would you like this information to be used somehow, to be sold to managers? One of the companies which is really, really big in building these apps for women hygiene, right? They were collecting the data because they were all signed terms and conditions, right? And they were collecting this data and selling them to the highest bidder. So if your manager happens to be one of them, they can get information about whether you want to have a baby or not. Would you like that information to be public? Probably not. Not even that. There are a couple of companies around there. Would you like your health insurance company to know exactly how often you go to the gym? Maybe not, right? Or maybe you have this experience before as well. Like, this experience, you're speaking with a friend, and all of a sudden, whatever you are speaking about shows up in 2 minutes on Instagram. Like, who had this experience before, right? That's not comfortable. In fact, there are studies also proving that there is information being sent every minute as we're speaking. So if we all generally together speak of Jamaica for some reason, for many, many times, like 20 times Jamaica, it's very likely that it's going to show up later as well. And so when I look into this and I talk about this, what is the point? The point is really, in this debate about the importance of privacy, very often we lose day-to-day battles, right? If you're looking for a new job, for example, you don't want your manager to know about this before you actually get a new job, right? If you want to propose to a partner and you're searching for a wedding ring, you don't want that partner to learn about it from Instagram, right? That's probably quite important. So the list is really endless, and it's really important to keep this in mind. So when we look into what we as developers can do about it, this has been a thing for a while. We all learned about it. We all have heard of GDPR. And in fact, it's also a wonderful reading material for Friday night, which is also quite interesting to explore. But if you look into it in more detail, you'll find out that these cookie prompts that we see all the time, they're not necessarily what the GDPR was about in the first place, right? It's just many companies actually decided it's actually a good idea to get as much consent as possible very quickly and very dirty. And so we ended up with the mess that we ended up now, right? And so the main concept behind it is really very simple, which is privacy by design, right? Privacy is a default. Every time we're building or designing today, privacy is a default. It's not something you have to get consent for. It's a default. And this is for me personally at least, it's a pretty decent summary on one slide, right? So privacy is the default, security is as well. Privacy options may not be confusing. You may not trick somebody into giving consent. This option has to be very obvious. You have to provide consent or not. If you require only functional cookies, for example, you don't need this pop-up at all, right? If you require anything else beyond that, then you actually do need one. There are a couple of studies showing that they actually worked and they didn't work. But it's remarkable that only a few companies in 2018, like 5% after it actually became a law, right? It's only 5% of the top 5,000 websites that actually implemented it. And most of the time it looks horrible like this. Why do you show me this if there is no real choice? I mean, it doesn't matter where you click, right? As it says here, by clicking I accept or X on this banner or using our site, you consent to this use of cookies. It doesn't matter where you click. Essentially, it's not GDPR compliant, of course, right? And the question that I was asked, so we don't have a GDPR compliant website. Can a developer be arrested before they have built a non-GDPR compliant website? Can they be arrested? No, they cannot be arrested because there is always a data protection officer whose responsibility is to take care of this, right? But you probably don't want to build something that somebody else can be arrested for. That's a slightly different story, right? And if you look into the options, this is just horrible. Like on Vice, you have 512 trackers, all grouped, beautifully grouped. But then, because I go to extremes to remove every single one of them, right? It took me 2 minutes to finish it off because I have 96 active one by default for some reason. And it's like I would opt in for more tracking, right? That's ridiculous, really. This is definitely not GDPR compliant, of course. So one of the common patterns that shows up now, and is becoming more and more widespread, right, is when you actually give a choice. Say, hey, here's a slider. So by default, you have required cookies, which is a default, and then functional cookies probably as well, but advertising cookies may not be selected by default. And then the user can see which functionality on the site is affected and maybe actually give you more data based on what you tell them, right? And the same thing happening here as well, right? So this is actually it's a bit better. So there is also a study on GDPR consent notices in the field, which was published actually early August, I think, this year, where they looked into the data. And it was very interesting to see that most people just ignore it. So it depends where. So this is German-speaking countries where they tested it, really. But most people, when they see this notice, they just dismiss it. They just don't click it away. They just scroll past through it, right? While if you look, at least according to my research, if you find it anywhere else, like say Belgium, Netherlands, people just click it away. So the highest chances of it to get consent is really if you put things in the bottom left, right here, because this is the highest chance of people accepting it, right? If you really need this particular kind of data. right? But we might think, okay, this is interesting, so where is it all heading, and what does it mean for us? Well, there is a lot of stuff happening at this point. There was a grace period, which is over now, and there's been 95,000 complaints about GDPR violations. But of course, the main legal battle is really between the big ones, the Marriott and the Google that has to pay now 50 million euros, right? And it's only the starting point, and it's very important to know, because this is like probably for us, because we are developers. We don't, maybe most of us at least, are not specialists in law, right? But it's important to understand that this is just the beginning, because now, starting from January 1st, there is a new law coming to California, and this law is actually like light GDPR, so it's also our responsibility now to know how to design and build websites for that. And the main struggle that many people in the US at least are kind of discussing now is that every single state in the US might have a separate privacy law. So depending on the state, very much like with banks, right? You would need to have negotiations. You would need to have different pop-ups depending on what kind of state you're coming from. This would be horrible. This would really be disgusting. And in many ways also, it was really interesting because just recently I had this conversation with somebody who came to me and said, well, if you are a doctor, you need to study, get a license to become a doctor, right? If you're a lawyer, you need to study to become a lawyer. Do designers and developers need licenses now? We do have responsibilities for building things like Facebook and Google and all of that, and everybody can be a designer. You can just wake up one day and say, I'm a designer now, or I'm a developer now, right? And building things that are potentially having a lot of damage for people around us, right? This is a very serious thing, really, but this is something we need to keep in mind. And one important thing is, many of us are using things like Quantcast, which provides this pop-up solution out of the box, and you pay for the service, essentially. Well, you can use it, but you need to keep in mind it's not necessarily GDPR compliant because it forces and tricks people into consent, which is not GDPR compliant. So if you're using one of those, if you're using this one, it's probably a good idea to choose something else, like, for example, Consently, which is a really, really good option. It's actually also a very affordable one. I'm not affiliated, but it's a really good one. But the future looks bright, because we will not see all these pop-ups in 2 or 3 years at all. And this is really important for us to know too, because what's happening now is that there is the e-privacy directive in motion right now, where the idea is to move away from this cookie consent pop-up, instead saying, wouldn't it be better if you had a do not track option in browser settings, right? So you set it on a particular value, and you actually advertise or you communicate that you do not want to be tracked, or there is a particular level of tracking that you accept, and then it would be your responsibility as developers to respect users' decision, right? So nobody would see these pop-ups and all, but of course you can imagine how much lobbying is against it, because a lot of huge marketing industry is built around collecting the data. So how would we then ask for data? That's a question. So instead of pushing and showing this huge privacy policy thing and right in your face, and this huge pop-up that people just dismiss, why don't we do it gradually? Like saying, oh, I need geolocation today. Maybe can I use your geolocation, please? It will be used only to show this and to do that, and so on. And then maybe as the user keeps going and flowing through the site, can actually ask for more. Oh, maybe could I collect some data for advertising? I'm not going to use it in a bad way, right? Just a little bit so we can make the service better. So kind of gradually progress, getting more and more data if you need it, instead of just showing this wall of text saying, hey, I need everything now, right? So this is actually a very important thing that we will need to work on quite a lot. So when we look into all of this so far, privacy, oh, this is actually a wrong summary. Privacy is, I know, it's a very boring thing, which is why I brought chocolate, right? But I think this is very important for us as developers to know, just to figure out what to do next. And one important thing is that very often when we look into these bad patterns, dark patterns, we often focus on only one thing, only one part of the business metrics mix. So I'm consulting with companies as well, and very often, especially in light of GDPR, there's been awareness about the role of privacy and all of that. So instead of just tracking conversion, which is very common for e-commerce, of course, there'll be new metrics showing up, like, for example, time to repeat purchase. How much time passes by between somebody buys and then buys again, right? Recommendation strength. How often do people recommend certain brand or certain product to other companies, right? Time to first share on Twitter, Instagram, and so on. First purchase, time to first upgrade. Performance obviously matters. Also kind of notes of how can we calculate the lifetime value, Because if you use dark patterns to increase and boost conversion, yes, you will get people quickly, but then they will not stay for a long time because they'll be disappointed later, right? And so there are all these things that are kind of also part of the story, which you tend to forget. And the important one is really the last one, turnaround score, where you can turn and really a customer who doesn't like the brand or had a really bad experience with the brand into a loyal customer, right? So this is a very important thing to keep in mind here as well. I have way more slides about this, but I think that it's a good idea to move on at this point and look into something else. Namely, and that's an interesting one, authentication, right? So privacy is important, we got there, but we also need to look into some of the techniques that we are using today. Like one of them is the beauty of captcha. I mean, captcha is kind of dead, but you will still find it on the fringes of the internet. And in fact, when we think about the captcha, we don't think about captcha this way. We think about captcha as this. Because there is somebody in the back looking at us, looking at every single character that we're typing. Now, luckily, captcha is dead, really is, just because there are some tests and there is incredible machine learning techniques and tools that make it almost impossible for humans to decipher things that machines cannot decipher. So, on average, a user needs around 10 seconds to solve a text-based captcha. That's something to keep in mind. And have you ever heard of voice captcha? Now, that belongs to museums. That's unbelievable. It's like people need 30 seconds to solve the audio version of a captcha, right? And 20 people just give up after a few tries, right? Luckily, machines has got incredibly better at this. So machines can solve with captchas, any captchas, with 99.8% accuracy, while humans only with 33%. So it's not very helpful to have captcha. That's a really good thing to have if you want to argue for or against captcha. And in fact, any captcha can be broken in 0.05 seconds, right? So when we talk about this is better, right? So this is the invisible captcha that came out from Google a few years ago, and it has been adopted, unless if they think that you are weird. Oh, who doesn't like street signs? Like that little street sign, is it still in that rectangle? Or is it already belongs to the other one? So actually, if we can't get away from, because these things really cost conversion, right? It's a really important thing that we often tend to forget. So very often, when we look into spam prevention or like authentication in general, obviously, we'll probably start with the simple ones without captcha. It's not like captcha should be the only version of the first option that we're going to use. So we'll be using Akismet to block spam IPs. We can also ask a random plain human question. But of course, if you have a bot attack happening, it will not help you. So you can use a honeypot technique where you have an input field which is kind of hidden, right? And if it's filled in, then it's probably was a bot because it's not visible or not accessible to humans, right? You can also use time traps. So you can disallow submitting something for 1.5 seconds or 3 seconds or 4 seconds to avoid spam bots from completing. And then if all of this doesn't work, then we can try to work with reCAPTCHA. We don't have any other choice really, or reCAPTCHA free on all pages, which essentially allows Google to then, of course, track the user's behavior and journey. And so if they have if they appear like a real customer, then these street signs will not show up, right? But also on the other side, it's interesting to see these things, right? The email input, where you type your first name, your last name, your email address, and then you have to confirm your email address. And we, of course, know that there is no way in heaven I'm going to retype my email address. No. They got the wrong person here. No, no way. So who is going to copy-paste the email address? Yes, all of us. Well, the thing is, there are solutions to this, right? Incredible solutions. One of them is let's block them. Oh, that's so nice. It's so beautiful. Everybody loves it. Like retyping, it's great, right? It's a really bad user experience. Or the second one is, which is the most genius thing I've ever seen in my life. Let's break the input field into 2 input fields. Before the @ symbol and after the @ symbol, right? And I was testing it with real users, and they're like, whatever, I can copy-paste twice. That's not a problem for me. I can deal with this. And in fact, 60% of customers will consistently copy-paste, right? And so when we think about email confirmation for authentication, for example, or for signups, the worst thing you can do is to ask people to confirm at the point where they just typed it in, right? Because we really have to think about when does it matter most to them. So when we were designing the e-commerce experience on the site, we don't ask you to confirm, right? Essentially, we ask you to confirm only at the point where it really matters. And when does it matter most? Just before you buy something or once you bought something. So just before you're hitting that button to buy, well, then you can adjust your email address. And also, once you purchase something, there is this send confirmation to another email link, which you can click, and then you can change your email address there as well. And the important thing is here, this page is so important. Once you bought something, go to the confirmation page, you're not going to leave that page quickly, do you? No. No. We're going to linger for a while, maybe get a coffee, right, or something. This page is going to stay, because we're going to do what? Well, we're going to check if the email has arrived, right? The confirmation email, it's very important. And if it doesn't, we start getting nervous, right? And then we do this magical thing, which is very important. We're going to take a screenshot, right? Just in case, right? And also, maybe because screenshot might not have worked, we're going to actually save as PDF, right? This is what many people, anybody doing this? Yes, because we don't trust them, right? Right. And so, because this is a very important page, this is important, extremely important page. So if you can put something like a password, like this is what we do here, set up a password, get an extra discount, or like this is where people really pay attention, so we should be actually doing this as well, right? And the same goes for email too, by the way. Oh, these beauties. Oh, this is getting better and better every year, right? I feel like, because very often we trump or we care about security more than we care about usability, but when things are not usable, they're not secure either. Right? Because if things are not usable, then people start writing down things on notes and put them on laptop so everybody can see it. This is not secure, right? So when you think about these passwords, right? On average, people have 4.2 passwords, right? You know, there is a Facebook password. This is a good password. Decent password. Lowercase, uppercase, exclamation mark, dots, any emoji, anything. Anything goes in there. It's a really good password. Then there is a Gmail password. Good password, long password, strong password, everything that you ever need. Because if somebody steals your Gmail identity, that would be bad. Somebody steals your Facebook identity, that would be bad. Somebody steals your online banking identity, that would be really bad. But our online banking passwords are very short, usually. Shorter, so we can remember them, right? I mean, of course, many of us here in the room will be using password managers and things like that. But, you know, we're not normal in that regard, right? Because there is also the fourth password. The fourth password. That's the password that you know the moment you wake up, right? That's a password that you will be using when somebody asks you to create an account, right? If you really want to keep logging. I mean, your password managers people, I think, but many people are like that. And that password is usually quite long, but memorable, right? Now, what if your password is not good enough for them? That happens because you're missing some special characters or lowercase or digits or, I don't know, and glyph or hieroglyph or anything. Because at this point, I mean, what else is missing? I don't know what else is missing, right? So what do we do then? Well, then we take our password and then we just add that extra character to to match their requirements. And this is very dangerous because the moment we check out, we have forgotten that password already, so the next time we have to log in, we will have to recover it. That's really expensive for e-commerce as well, right? And I think, so this is really just typical for all these traditional issues that we are just taking. And it's not normal that we have so many input fields on the web. It should be gone for good. We don't need input field. I mean, for some things we do. But in general, we don't really need that many input fields. Anybody familiar with this patent? I like printing things on paper. You know. So this is a patent which was filed by Amazon in 1999. This is a one-click checkout patent. Anybody familiar with one-click? Right. So it has expired on September 11, 2017. And if you don't trust Wikipedia, there is also Google patents. So it actually did expire. And the best part about it, that the moment that it expired, that moment or that month, Payment Request API came out. Anybody familiar with Payment Request API? Oh, let's see. So Payment Request API allows you to build applications which essentially allow you to do one-click checkout. Do you see any one-click checkouts out there except Amazon? So essentially, you click on a button, buy now with one click, and boom, you don't have to do anything else. And this is really kind of closely connected to authentication. So I started looking into how one-click checkout works, and how come we don't use it, because the patent is, it has expired. I need only like 5 more minutes, and then I'm And it was really fascinating because, of course, they force you to create an account, but you don't have to do that. The moment somebody buys a product on your site, they could be co-creating an account for them, essentially. But you have to create an account first, right? And then there is this regular Add to Cart button that's showing up, when you can buy now things, right? But it's not a one-click checkout, right? So once you decide to buy something, you have to provide shipping details, payment details, all the regular stuff. And the magical thing is really what's happening next. Because next, what happens is, if you look in Chrome or Firefox, anywhere, they're actually setting cookies for 15 to 20 years. So Amazon drops a cookie to identify the customer, and then the one-click checkout option is activated by default. Now, and I asked myself, how come is that when I go to Amazon, it's really rare that I have to log in. It's really rare. I mean, I don't even remember the last time logging in. But every single service I go to, except Amazon, I have to log in all the time. I have to type in my password all the time. Why is it that it's, what is the difference? Now, this one-click checkout is activated by default, which means that the next moment you want to buy something, this buy with one click is actually showed right away. So what is happening is really interesting. As long as you do not change any sensitive data, like your credit card details or shipping address or billing details, it will be shipped to the same address using the same credit card as long as you click on that button, as long as this cookie is in the browser, right? So it doesn't matter if you're logged in or logged out, as long as this cookie is on that browser and you click on that button, it's going to be shipped to the same address using the same credit card, right? And I'm wondering, so is Amazon really the only company in the world that can afford this? Is it okay or is it not okay? Why aren't we doing this? Because very often when we think about authentication, think about two states. You're either signed in, you're signed out, but there could be also something in between, right? And so maybe some of our applications should react depending on, different states, which are not necessarily on and off, right? And this is really interesting because we might want to look into getting authentication done a bit differently, right? And also, it's always fun because, in September 12th, there is a new law coming, European directive coming in, where you have to have two-factor authentication for banking. I mean, I'm sure that most of you are implementing this already at this point as well. And it's very confusing that many people think that two-factor authentication is things like this, right? The questions, who doesn't like a good question, right, when you sign up, right? And the best part about United is they give you the questions, and then, as you can see, there is a drop-down, they give you the answers as well, right? You don't have to remember, you just remember the combination. Now, this is not a two-factor authentication because it's always about two separate things, right? You need something the user knows, and or something the user has, and or something the user is, right? So this is why we need, like, for example, phone and laptop, like two different devices, like a password and device and things like that, right? And so authentication is also something that we will need to revisit at some point. So now there are many, many, many more slides here. And if you really care about React and all the Houdini, you will find them in here. Just to wrap up, it was important for me to highlight something that I think often are forgotten. We all can find wonderful sessions on CSS Houdini and how to improve performance. And again, you find the links in the deck as well. But these things are really something that I was really astonished by when I was doing research and I was talking to people. And that makes me very, very sad, mostly because there are also real people who suffer through the interfaces that we're building. And I want to show this short video just to, oh, hold on, it doesn't play, just to inspire you to build more applications that are actually really helpful to people. Hold on. Oh, no.
You might wonder how blind people deal with everyday challenges. Well, normally the answer is simple. We're not that different from you. We play music. We go to school. We go to work. You get the picture. But sometimes the simplest things can be difficult, and we need a pair of eyes.
Connect to
First available helper.
That's where you come in.
establishing video connection.
Through your smartphone, Be My Eyes connects the blind with sighted people through a live video connection. Simply choose if you need help or want to help by the click of a button.
That's a nice picture of you and your family, Caroline.
Is it for a present? Yes, it's a photo from my parents.
You can help just by installing the Be My Eyes app,
Correct image.
and we'll notify you when someone needs your help. And if you're in the middle of something, don't worry. Someone else will step in. So, would you care to be my eyes?
So, you know, this is, for me, really, like this entire topic of privacy is all about, you know, we're building things for people, and whether we want it or not, we have responsibility for what we're building. And I would not want my product, whatever I'm building, to be used somehow to target vulnerable people who might not be able to read, who might not be able to hear, things like that. I just wouldn't feel comfortable with that, right? And so especially those tracking, it's not about, for me, it's not about advertising, it's more about tracking. I'm okay with seeing ads, and actually, to be honest, my Instagram ads work really well on me, apparently. They know me really, really well, and I'm not the ones who is going to deactivate everything, right? But again, it's about the tracking and knowing a bit more than they should know, right? Because there are certain things that should remain private, and also certain things in the conversation should remain between two people, not between two people and Facebook, right? And again, I'm not anti-Facebook. I mean, maybe I am. I don't know. Doesn't matter, right? And also because it's a little bit sad, just to bring up everybody into so we go into lunch, and also have chocolate, by the way. I want to share the story of my life, which I always share. You will never get things perfect, and maybe that's okay. Oh, this is a very sad story. No, let's play it. Hold on. This is the state of front-end 2019. For designers. Oh, that's also sad somehow. Okay, but I have thanks to Pearl Studio for the video. Listen, mind cats, and Meow, and thank you for being here.